Okay, hey guys, Dan Fitzpatrick here, stockmarketmentor.com. Thanks for tuning in. I want to talk to you about SpaceX today. I think this is a pretty interesting situation. I went into this in a lot more detail in our premium strategy session today, talking about various aspects of SpaceX. I'm not going to go into that here. If you're a member, dude, you need to get over there. I'm talking about options. I'm talking about all kinds of stuff. But for everybody, I think it's really important that you check this out. For one thing, it's probably one of the highest profile stocks in the market today, and certainly today with earnings. So we'll look at a couple things. And by the way, just to give you the heads up, I really strongly urge you to check out Stock Market Mentor. Join for I'll say it's a free trial because you got to pay $7 for 14 days. And if you can't afford 2 quarters a day, what the hell are we doing here? Okay, so check that out. I promise you, I promise you it's going to be worth $7. You're going to stick around. Just about everybody does, but you don't know that if you don't do it. So do that. Now, let's look at SpaceX. So this is where they reported earnings after the bell. So this is where the stock was. Damn it. You know, it was up at 125.33 prior to earnings. Man, that sucks because after earnings, what happened? Oh my God, you know, they came down to 117. So not a good day, right? No, I disagree because look at this. Volume, not surprisingly because of earnings, volume was twice what the typical volume is. And so and the stock is up, not a lot from yesterday, but it's up almost 3%. Guys, this is buying. This is buying activity here. It's not selling activity. This is selling activity. This is selling activity. This is actually buying activity because even though it's red, even though this is spiky, you look and see what happened to the stock. It gapped up and ultimately ran higher. So the point is, this here is buying activity. Yes, it looks like, you know, it looks like a almost kind of a reversal pattern because it ran up so much and then it closed down near the intraday low. So not a good day that way. However, if you look at this in the aggregate, guys, it hadn't been trading for that long. Most of the time, it's just been going down. But I look at this here again in reaction to earnings. Like prior to earnings, all bets are off. This could be a $40 stock or it could be a $9,000 stock. How do we know? But as I look at this now, prior to earnings, I see the floor on this stock at about 105, but we'll say down to 100. We'll say this is a $100 floor. So even buying this right now, I'm not saying you should, not saying you shouldn't. Even buying this right now, if you want to get literally really let this thing stretch out, you can keep a stop just a little bit below $100 and you're risking 15%. Now, would I do that? No, I ain't going to risk 15% on anything. But I would consider doing it where yesterday's low was 104.83. Now the stock's up here, 104 like 82, gives me an 11% risk. I don't even like that. So you know what I would do instead? I would say, okay, this is post earnings here, this number. So this is the low of the day is 114.05. Why don't I do this? Why don't I take a little bit of stock under the assumption, under the thesis that the stock's going to stay above Tuesday's intraday low? That gives me a 3% risk. That gives me a 3% risk on this initial entry, early entry, and then I'll look to trade this dang thing intraday. So I'm taking one little teeny tiny position and then looking here, and this is 59-minute trader stuff, guys, all day long. That's what I'm going to be doing with this tomorrow. I will only be adding to my position if the stock starts trading above this magical orange line, which is the volume weighted average price. If the stock starts trading above there, that's when I'm going to start adding to my position. So, guys, and by the way, not going to get into it now, but this is a box that I'm drawing about showing you guys how to do options and spreads and implied moves and stuff like that. But that's in the premium deal today. So, anyway, this should give you a pretty good trading plan for SpaceX tomorrow. But I'll say once again, if you haven't tried Stock Market Mentor, do yourself a favor and do me a favor too, frankly, because I want to help you out. Sign up for a free trial, $7, and email me and let me know you did it. Personal email address, dan@stockmarketmentor.com. If you type it to dan.fitzpatrick@stockmarketmentor.com, I don't see it. That goes to my assistant. So just do dan@stockmarketmentor.com. That is my personal email. I want to hear from you. Okay. I truly, truly do. So anyway, you guys have a good evening and I'll see you tomorrow. And guess what? Let's go make some money.